Hi, welcome to Coffee with Raymond. I'm Raymond, and this is my coffee. Same mug as last time. I actually don't have a very large variety of mugs. I only own like 3 or 4 mugs, but maybe we'll make it a thing on here. Maybe I'll find some fancy, interesting mugs that you may not be able to find in, common places. Like I'm not going to show you a Starbucks mug or something. Anyways, today we are going to talk about the most good we can do, which is like a big topic, right? So we ended last video and I talked about my journey and through some loss and grief and how I transformed recently into sort of a new person. I think we do this a lot of times in our lives. We have these periods of transformation where we grow and we change in some way. And, that's what I talked about last week. This topic could cover like 30 videos. Like I might end up doing like 30 different videos around elements of this topic. But before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about drive. And, one thing you might notice about today, if you've watched any of my Gentleman Game Designer videos when I was trying the game design tutorial series, it's the same sweater. And I was going to do a video. I don't know if I did do a video on player drive, but I was going to do a video on how we drive player behaviors in games. And there's parallels to player drive to something called character drive, which authors use in their novels, right, to tell a story around their character, to do character development. And in The Structure of Story by Ross Hanneman, they talk about the need for a character engine being driven by a character drive, and that being driven by a void. And a void is something that character is missing, that they're trying to get back, a long lost love, a desire for something deep within themselves, some sort of new discovery, right? You can see it almost in any character driven story. There's something that is driving that character forward in their actions. And usually it's because there's something that's missing from their life. There's a void they're trying to fill in some way. And so I want to talk today about ambition, and I want to talk about my drive in my life and what that experience is like. And in order for me to talk about that, I have to share with you something deeply personal and incredibly vulnerable, and that is my void, the thing that drives me at the center of who I am. So I've disclosed on previous videos that I'm autistic, right? I was diagnosed in 2000 by 2 separate panels of doctors. The first panel of doctors was at an institution where I was forced and committed to for 3 months. I have a really successful life. I lead a team at a major bank. I make good money, right? I've had a good life. And so people see me in public. They see me at work. They see me out and they say, well, you don't look autistic. You're not really autistic. And they don't realize that autism develops throughout life, right? It's an ongoing thing. We don't stop being autistic when we're 18, right? We continue on into adulthood. I was institutionalized as a child. I was in foster care for 2 years as a child. My mother had to give me up to the state in order for me to get treatment as a child. I spent 6 months in an institution in Cleveland called Parmadale, in an intensive treatment program to help treat, all kinds of trauma associated with my experiences as a child. My life looks rosy now because I built it this way. It was not always this way. In my 20s, I wanted to prove that I was capable. I wanted to prove that I was valid. I wanted to prove that I had a right to exist. I wanted to prove that autistic people could become professionals, even if it meant I had to hide myself for 18 years. After I left these programs, I had to work my way back out of the system. And I begged my parents to let me go to college. Nobody in my family's gone to college. I was a first-generation college student, first-generation college graduate, first one in my family. I begged them to let me do this. And my mom, bless her heart, said yes. She signed on the dotted line. And in that moment, she gave me my future. And so after I went to college, and while I was in college, I put my head down and I studied every day. While people were going to parties and socializing, I was on my laptop coding. When you come from nothing and you're given the opportunity, that stroke of a pen, that chance, you embrace it with everything that you have. And also, when I was in college, I was free of my family. I was free of the system. I was free of everything. I could actually be completely 100% self-directed. And I self-directed myself into my studies hard as I could, as hard as I could. And then when I graduated college, it took me a little bit to get a job. I was homeless for about 3 months. Slept, I couch surfed. I didn't sleep on the streets. Thankfully, I had a network of friends who, if any of you are watching, I miss you. And so when I graduated, I was able to kind of pull myself together. Not long after, I started my career. And in my career, in my 20s, all I wanted to do was prove that I was valid, that I had worth, that I could fit in. Because I thought, if I can prove my worth, right, I can prove that autistic people have worth. I can prove it if I can succeed from nothing. And so that's what drove me in my 20s. It wasn't partying. It wasn't women. It wasn't even necessarily money. It was just that I would be successful on my own terms in a way that is undeniable to anyone that would see it. So we come back to this question: what is the most good we can do? To talk about the most good we can do, we got to talk about this book. This is The Most Good You Can Do by Peter Singer. And this book talks about a concept called effective altruism. And effective altruism is just this question: what is the most good we can do? Unfortunately, some bad actors have recently corrupted the ideas of effective altruism by co-opting it for their own greedy purposes. And they are now in prison. So please don't do what those people did. But okay, so here's the general idea behind effective altruism. It's based on this idea of utilitarianism. And utilitarianism is based on 3 principles. And I'll put some links down in the description below so you can go watch videos from like a philosophy professor who can teach this way better than I ever could, and can give you, a corroborated other side perspective. So, it's not just some random guy in the internet talking about things that don't really exist, right? So this is a real thing. So utilitarianism has sort of three aspects to it. The first is something called hedonism, which we've talked about, which is this idea that we should be ending pain and we should be maximizing pleasure or enjoyment, satisfactoriness in society. That's the idea of hedonism. The second aspect of this is called consequentialism, which says that the results of your actions matter, right? The results of your actions matter. Even if you had a good intent, if the result of that good intent results in a lot of people suffering, it was a bad action. It was immoral to take that action because the consequences matter. That's the argument of consequentialism. The consequences matter, right? And then the third part of this is called aggregation. And there are different ways to aggregate things together, but aggregate typically means combine, right? Aggregate, combine. So we're going to combine all of human suffering, and we're going to combine all of human pleasure, and we're going to try to maximize for the most pleasure minus the least pain, right? And this then becomes sort of a mathematical equation. It's very attractive if you are a software developer, because I can look at this and I can say, well, that's something I can optimize. That's a formula that I can fit a curve to, right? So there's problems with how we aggregate and what kind of aggregation matters and all of that. I'm not going to go into that. There are books and books and books written on this, but that's the general idea behind utilitarianism. So the extension of this mindset is that if you get to a certain point in society where your pleasure is really well maximized, right, you should try to start minimizing the pain of others. So that's kind of the idea. And even though this is a book, this is a good introduction to maybe the topic. He is notably famous for writing a paper in 1972 called Famine, Affluence, and Morality. I think those might be in a different order, but 1972, he wrote this paper where he basically argued that most people are evil. And his argument kind of went like this, right? Imagine that you are on the way to work, to an important meeting. You have an expensive suit on or an expensive dress on, and you're running late, and you see a child drowning in a fountain. You see this child drowning in a fountain. Now, if you were to run by this fountain and not save this child and show up at the meeting and say, "Oh, sorry, I'm a few minutes late. I almost stopped for this drowning child, but don't worry, I didn't. I didn't want to get my pants wet. I just barely made it on time." What would you think of that person, right? You would think that they're a monster. You would think that they are evil. How did you skip helping that child? How could you let that child drown? You were right there. How could you let that happen? Right? That's the argument. That's a very easy thing. I bet you agree with this. I hope that you agree with this. Most people on earth agree with this statement. Okay. So then what Peter Singer did, then what he did is he said, well, let's genericize this statement. Let's say instead of it being a drowning child, let's say it's just something that's really bad is going to happen. Something that is universally recognized as being bad, right? This is an immoral, bad thing. People are going to die. Children are going to be hurt. Animals are going to be hurt. So this is a very bad thing. And the other word that he used was something of moral insignificance. Moral insignificance. So then he rephrases the statement and he says, imagine if you were in a situation where you didn't need to take on much pain. You took on something that was morally insignificant to you, right? You're getting your suit wet. You're getting your pants wet. Something that's morally insignificant to prevent something very bad from happening, then we should probably take that action. We should take that action. It is a moral thing to stop that very bad thing from happening if it doesn't really harm us from doing so, right? So if it doesn't hurt you, or if it's even a mild inconvenience to do so, or if it's even mildly painful, but it prevents something significantly more painful from occurring, right? That's something that we should do. We should fix. So you're probably with me so far. But let me ask you a question. Why did you buy that last Starbucks coffee instead of giving $5 to that starving kid in Africa? You're not saving that drowning child. You're buying yourself fancy things. You're not saving that person who's been bombed and is sick and is bleeding. You're buying another pocket watch. I say that because in the last video, you'll know that I collected a lot of pocket watches. I'm evil too. I want to undo that, but that's the truth. We have a duty to help those who are less fortunate than us. We have that duty. Just because they're on the other side of the world doesn't absolve us of that duty. We still have that duty to one another. So I'm going to tell you about how we can reform that duty, how we can live to that duty, and how we can do so in a way that I think most of us can agree with. I think everyone can agree with. I think I figured it out. I think there's a problem in society with trust. We don't trust each other anymore as Americans. We don't trust the government. We don't trust our charities. We don't trust our businesses. There's no trust. And trust by some bad actors is purposefully being broken for a variety of reasons. There are all kinds of different factions online vying for your attention and your agreement. And they will divide you against anything else that you love if it means that you will side with them. I don't want to name any one particular faction because all the factions do this, all of them. And some of these factions are corporate. They want you to spend money in a certain way. Some of these factions want to control your political thought. Some of these factions want you to go out and commit violent acts in society. Please don't ever do that. All of them are working to erode your trust in each other, in yourselves, in your own memory, in your own experience. It is all about eroding trust. So I am at a point where I think the most good I can do is to help us rebuild that trust. I come from a conservative family. My dad, Republican all his life. My mom, Republican most of her life. I'm probably the furthest left person in my family. But this gives me a unique perspective because I understand conservatives. I understand how they think. I understand why they think the way that they do. I understand it. And in fact, I empathize with it. I see you. You want fairness in the world. You want to be able to raise your family without government interference. These are great things. You want to not pay tons of taxes, especially if your interests aren't represented in government. That is the perspective, isn't it? I mean, there are certainly more extreme perspectives, but that's the general thought. I think we've lost sight of each other. And I think we've lost sight of this trust. I am going to rebuild it. And the good news is I think there's a way to do it that doesn't involve politics, and it doesn't even have to involve government. How cool is that? How cool is that? I have an idea that will reconnect us to one another without the need for politics and without the need for government. Do you want to know what it is? It's charity. You see, if you're a conservative, you're probably a Christian, my guess. Maybe not be Christian, you might be some other religious, but most conservatives, in my experience, are deeply religious individuals. And I have good news for you, because I too am a deeply religious individual. In the Bible, it says that you cannot serve God in wealth. You can't serve God in wealth. You can't do it. It's not possible. That's what the Bible says. You have to choose. In fact, in early Christian writings, even advocating for the wealthy was considered a grave sin. Advocating for wealth was considered immoral. We have built our country on the back of wealth. And I am a believer in capitalism. I'm a believer in the pursuit of happiness and the drives of desire. I believe in those things. I believe in people's right to pursue those things independently, without interference. But I also believe that as Christians, we have a duty to stop aberrant wealth. Now, that's not to say that we can't allow wealth and we can't allow people to build wealth. I'm not suggesting that at all. But I am suggesting that as a Christian, we are brought toward charity. And we are asked to tithe. 10% of our income, at least, should go to charity. I don't know a single conservative Christian who would disagree with that statement. Not a single one. So the problem is, where do you put your charity? Do you give it to your church? Do you give it to a non-government organization? Do you give it to the guy down the street? Do you give it to a highly respected and rated charity that has been around forever? Do you give it to a missionary organization? Where should you put your money so that it actually does the most good? I'm building a nonprofit that I call Wonder and Code. The first initiative of this nonprofit is going to be to generate an app, a new kind of application that I'm calling Tithe. Imagine if your charity got directed in the places that you wanted them to go directly within your own community. You can specify whatever percentage that you want. And then you get to specify your interest, the places that you want that money to go. What kind of problems matter most to you? Ending homelessness, giving children in your local community school backpacks, right? helping out with the local missionary to end drug addiction in your community. I want you to imagine an application that is not there for profit, that when you sign up for, you specify your income and a percentage of your income that you want to give to charity or to issues that you care about. These issues can be issues within your own local community, or they can be issues within your state, your country, or even overseas. You specify things like, I want to end hunger. I want to end childhood poverty. I want to bring joy back into the world by giving books to children. You specify the things that matter to you. You specify the communities you want your money to be invested into, where you want that money to go. And then what we'll do is we will use an AI algorithm to match you to the most respected, highly related charities in your community or wherever you specify based on your preferences. We'll then build a giving plan for you. So you'll get to see exactly how much of your money is going to what organizations. You get to see what that organization mission is. You get to see why we made the recommendation. You get to see ratings from multiple different providers to give you faith that your money is going to somewhere where it's going to do the most good. And then you say, give. Every month, you get a giving plan and you click the button. You have a chance not to give if you don't want to, but you hit give and the money gets dispersed within your community, along with all of the other people in your community who have decided democratically through their own decision-making in the app that this is where they want their money to go. We don't need government to fix America. We can do it ourselves. The problem is nobody's ever made this application. They've made different versions of smaller bits. The smaller bits all exist, right? We can link them together. I've done the research. But this application doesn't exist. And you know why it doesn't exist? Because there's no profit in it. You cannot ethically make money doing this. So we're not going to make money doing this. We're going to build a nonprofit and we're going to build this application for everybody to be able to use and to rebuild the trust that they have in their communities and to direct their money where they want it to go. That's what I'm going to build. That's what I think is going to help me do the most good in the world for everyone else and to help you do the most good in the world for everyone else. This is probably going to take a couple years, right, to build this. And what I'm going to do on this channel is I'm going to talk about my experience building this application. I'm going to talk about how we're building it. I'm going to talk about why we're building it. I'm going to share all of those details with you, and you can find them on wonderandcode.com. So I've already posted my videos up there. I'm posting game plans up there. I'm going to post all of the tickets, and we're going to do software development. I'm going to have a Jira board. Like, we're going to do the whole thing. Okay. And at the end of this, in a couple years, we're going to have an application that is going to help people direct their money within their communities in a way that they have full and absolute trust in, that helps them do the most good. Cool. So anyways, if you like my content, please sign up, subscribe down below. I am going to be posting every week. If you like it, please like the video. Please help the channel grow. Please share us out. There's something more important here than just me, right? I want to build this with you. So help me build this. We're going to change the world. Thank you, and I wish you the best. Until next week, until next time, peace.